The stage was set in a crowded debate hall that looked more like a championship arena than a political event. The banners of California and Texas stood tall behind the podiums, symbolizing not just two leaders, but two competing visions of America. The crowd buzzed with anticipation, reporters clutched their notebooks, and millions tuned in from their living rooms. On the left side of the stage stood Gavin Newsom, polished, confident, wearing his trademark sharp suit and signature smirk. He was ready to frame himself as the voice of progress, the defender of California's values. On the right side sat Greg Abbott, firm in his wheelchair, calm yet radiating the kind of Texas grit that made his supporters believe he could take on anyone, whether in Washington or in Sacramento. The moderator barely finished welcoming the audience when Newsom pounced. "Governor Abbott," he began with an almost mocking tone, "you lead a state that prides itself on freedom, yet your policies have left millions without healthcare, schools underfunded, and communities divided. California may not be perfect, but at least we lead with compassion." The audience reacted with a mix of applause and murmurs. Newsom smiled, clearly pleased with his opening strike. But Abbott didn't flinch. He leaned into the microphone, his voice steady and piercing. "Governor Newsom," he said, "if compassion means running your state into the ground, then I'll proudly stick to strength. Texas doesn't lecture, we deliver. Our economy thrives, our people work hard, and unlike California, folks aren't running away in droves." The crowd erupted. Even some reporters raised their eyebrows. The contrast was clear: one man spoke with polished rhetoric, the other with blunt conviction. This wasn't just about two governors, it was about two Americas colliding under the bright lights of live television. The moderator attempted to steer the conversation back, but Abbott wasn't done. "You mock Texas for our choices," he continued, his tone sharper, "yet thousands of Californians pack up their cars every month to move to my state. If your model works so well, why are they fleeing your so-called paradise?" Gasps filled the hall. Newsom's smirk faltered. For the first time, it seemed the battle would not go as smoothly as he had imagined. Newsom adjusted his tie and forced a smile, trying to recover his footing. "Greg, let's be honest," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "People don't move to Texas because of some miracle of governance. They move because it's cheap, cheap wages, cheap protections, cheap responsibilities. California invests in people. Texas exploits them." The crowd let out a mixed reaction, applause from Newsom's base, boos from Abbott's. Cameras zoomed in on Abbott, who leaned calmly forward, waiting for the noise to subside. "Cheap?" Abbott echoed, his tone sharp. "Governor Newsom, let me remind you, our cost of living is lower because our policies actually work. People can buy homes, raise families, and open businesses in Texas without drowning in taxes and regulations. Meanwhile, in California, families are crushed by costs while billionaires thrive. That's not compassion, that's hypocrisy." The hall rumbled with cheers, Abbott's words landing like thunder. Newsom's smirk returned, though thinner this time. He fired back quickly, "Hypocrisy? Greg, your state takes federal dollars from states like mine to prop up your budgets. Without California's economy, the U.S. wouldn't even function. So spare me the lectures about prosperity, you're standing on our shoulders." For a moment, the crowd gasped, sensing the sting in Newsom's jab. Abbott, however, didn't blink. He let the silence hang, then delivered his counter with surgical precision. "You're right, Gavin. California is big. But let's look at the scoreboard. You've got the largest homeless population in the nation. Crime spiraling out of control. Families leaving faster than they arrive. If that's the shoulders America is standing on, no wonder the country's hurting." The audience erupted, chants of "Abbott! Abbott! Abbott," filling the hall. Newsom's confident posture faltered for a second, his eyes flicking nervously toward the moderator. The duel wasn't just verbal, it was turning into a spectacle where Abbott's steady firepower was overwhelming Newsom's polished charm. Newsom leaned into the podium, trying to regain momentum. Greg, you love to throw stones, but let's not forget, Texas is no paradise. Women's rights under attack, voting rights restricted, gun violence unchecked. You talk about freedom, but in your state, freedom only applies if you agree with you. California, at least, gives people the right to live as they choose. The California side of the audience clapped loudly, while others booed. Abbott's eyes narrowed, his calm demeanor unshaken. He waited until the noise faded, then answered with a voice that cut like steel. Freedom, he repeated. Governor Newsom, you've twisted that word beyond recognition. In California, freedom means being taxed into poverty. It means parents watching their children walk past homeless encampments on their way to school. It means businesses crushed by red tape until they flee to Texas. Don't lecture me about freedom, Gavin. In Texas, freedom means opportunity, and people vote with their feet every single day by leaving your state for mine. The hall thundered, the cheers so loud the moderator had to raise his voice to restore order. Newsom gripped his notes, frustration flashing across his face. He tried a different angle, his tone sharp. Greg, you're proud of people fleeing to Texas, but what happens when they realize the truth? Lower wages, fewer protections, crumbling infrastructure. Texas is a mirage, bright from a distance, but hollow when you arrive. Abbott didn't hesitate. If Texas is a mirage, Gavin, then explain why your own residents, your entrepreneurs, your workers, even your Hollywood stars, are moving to it. They've seen through your facade. California might look glamorous on a postcard, but behind the lights, it's chaos. And deep down, you know it. The crowd erupted again, the chants this time even louder, Abbott. 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 Newsom tried to speak over them, but his voice was drowned out. The duel was no longer even, Abbott was dictating the tempo, turning every jab into an opportunity to land a knockout blow. Newsom, Ceci Byraz Yuxalarek, Tekra Taga Jekti. Greg, you can spin it however you like, but facts don't lie. California's GDP is nearly double Texas's. We're the innovation capital of the world, Silicon Valley, Hollywood, clean energy. Meanwhile, Texas clings to oil rigs and outdated ideas. That's not leadership, that's regression. The California supporters in the audience erupted in applause, waving signs and cheering. Cameras zoomed in on Abbott, who sat motionless, his hands calmly resting on the podium. He waited for the clamor to die down, then struck with a cold, cutting tone. Gavin, you're right about one thing, California has wealth. But you've turned that wealth into waste. Billions spent, and what do you have to show for it? Skyrocketing homelessness, failing infrastructure, businesses fleeing. Texas doesn't just create wealth, we protect it. We build on it. That's why people trust Texas with their future, not California. The crowd thundered, the chants of Abbott. Abbott, shaking the hall. Newsom forced a laugh, though it came off strained. Protect it? Greg, you hand it out to corporations while ignoring workers. You govern for the powerful, not the people. In California, we lift up everyone. In Texas, you lift up the few. Abbott's eyes flashed. Lift up everyone, he shot back. Tell that to the middle-class family in Los Angeles priced out of their home. Tell that to the small business strangled by California's red tape. Tell that to parents watching their kids grow up next to tents and needles. If that's lifting people up, Gavin, then no wonder they're running to Texas. The crowd gasped, then roared, the force of Abbott's words cutting deep. Newsom's face hardened, his smile gone, his jaw tight. This wasn't the polished debate he had envisioned. Abbott was cornering him with blunt truths that resonated far beyond the hall. Newsom straightened his posture, his voice rising with urgency. Greg, you love to paint California as chaos, but let's not ignore reality. Your so-called Texas model has left millions uninsured, schools underfunded, and communities neglected. You brag about people moving to Texas, but what kind of life awaits them? Low wages, no safety nets, no protections. That's not freedom, it's survival of the fittest. The California crowd cheered loudly, trying to drown out the growing momentum on Abbott's side. Newsom smirked, sensing he'd landed a blow. But Abbott leaned forward, his voice calm yet razor-sharp. Survival of the fittest, he repeated. Governor Newsom, in Texas, people don't survive, they thrive. We give them the chance to build, to innovate, to live without Sacramento or Washington breathing down their necks. You call it lack of protection. I call it liberty. And liberty has built the strongest economy in the nation. The hall shook with applause, but Abbott wasn't done. His tone deepened, commanding the room. And let's talk about those uninsured families you claim to care about. In California, you spend billions on programs that collapse under their own weight. People wait months for services that never come. In Texas, we cut the bureaucracy and let communities step up. Our system isn't broken, it works because our people work. Gasps and applause erupted, Abbott's words slicing through Newsom's narrative. Newsom's jaw tightened, but he tried to regain control. Greg, your rhetoric sounds great on stage, but on the ground, people are suffering. Healthcare, gun violence, infrastructure, you've turned your back on the very people you claim to represent. Abbott's eyes locked on him, his reply swift. And yet, Governor, when families look for hope, they don't go west. They go to Texas. That's the truth neither you nor your polished speeches can hide. If Texas is failing, why are Californians voting with U-Hauls every single day? The audience exploded, chants of Abbott. Abbott, drowning out Newsom's attempt to respond. The battle lines were clear, one man clung to rhetoric, the other wielded results like a weapon. Newsom, Giderek daha hersen bertanda konusmaya basladi. Greg, you keep pointing at people leaving California, but you never admit why they leave. They leave because housing is expensive, yes, but it's expensive because demand is high. People want to live in California, for its culture, its innovation, its opportunities. Texas may attract some for cheap costs, but cheap is not the same as quality. The California supporters roared in approval, waving their banners high. Newsom's smile returned, as if he had finally struck a nerve. Abbott, however, leaned in with a calm, piercing stare. His voice came steady, slicing through the cheers. Quality, he said slowly. Governor Newsom, what kind of quality are we talking about? Streets lined with tents? Parents worried about crime every night? Families priced out of their neighborhoods while Hollywood elites sip champagne? If that's your definition of quality, no wonder Californians are running to Texas. The hall erupted, the chants of Abbott. Abbott, rolling like thunder. Newsom's jaw tightened, but he pressed forward. At least in California, we fight for the environment, for climate, for the future. Texas is stuck in the past, oil, coal, and pollution. You're selling tomorrow for a quick buck today. Abbott's reply was swift, his words sharp and deliberate. We don't sell tomorrow, Gavin, we build it. Texas leads in energy production, not just oil but wind and solar. We power America while California drowns in blackouts. You brag about progress, but your progress can't even keep the lights on. Gasps filled the room, followed by explosive cheers from Abbott's supporters. Even some neutrals in the audience looked stunned. Newsom's composure slipped, he tried to interject, but the crowd's roar swallowed his voice. Abbott sat firm, eyes locked on his opponent, knowing he had just turned Newsom's proudest talking point into a devastating liability. The moderator raised a hand, trying to calm the roaring crowd, but the energy in the hall was beyond control. Cameras zoomed in on Newsom, who adjusted his jacket, his polished smile returning with a hint of irritation beneath it. Greg, he said firmly, you can throw around insults all night, but facts matter. California leads the nation in technology, entertainment, higher education. The brightest minds come to California because we represent the future. Texas might have cheap rent, but cheap doesn't buy innovation. The California supporters clapped and cheered, clearly relieved to see their governor pushing back. But Abbott sat unshaken, waiting until the noise subsided before delivering his counterpunch. "Gavin," Abbott began, his tone measured but lethal, "if California is the future, then the future looks pretty grim. Your tech companies are fleeing to Austin. Your students graduate buried in debt with no jobs waiting for them. Your Hollywood is in decline, while everyday families can't afford to live near the schools you brag about. You don't own the future, you're bankrupting it." The crowd roared, some even rising to their feet. Newsom's polished composure faltered again, his jaw clenching as he tried to laugh it off. "Greg, Texas is a one-trick pony. Oil, guns, and outdated politics. California creates culture. Texas clings to clichés." Abbott leaned into the mic, his voice cutting through the laughter from Newsom's side. "Culture?" he asked, pausing. "What kind of culture are we talking about? The culture of rising crime? The culture of streets lined with tents? The culture of people leaving as fast as they can? Texas isn't a cliché, it's a choice. And Gavin, it's the choice America keeps making." The audience exploded with chants, the camera capturing Newsom's forced smile turning into a grimace. The duel was becoming painfully one-sided. Abbott wasn't just answering, he was dismantling, piece by piece, the narrative Newsom had built his career on. By now, the debate hall was boiling with energy. The camera zoomed in on every twitch, every glance, knowing millions of viewers at home were hanging on each word. Newsom leaned forward, his tone now defensive but still sharp. "Greg, you can spin numbers all you want, but California represents progress. We invest in green energy, in culture, in equality. Texas might win cheap applause, but in the long run, California sets the standard for the nation." Applause broke out from his supporters, though it lacked the earlier thunder. His words seemed rehearsed, predictable. Abbott didn't rush, he waited for the clapping to die before he struck again. "Progress?" Abbott said, voice low but commanding. "Gavin, you keep using that word as if it excuses failure. Progress isn't a slogan, it's results. And the results are in. Families are leaving your state. Businesses are packing up. Crime is surging. Your so-called progress is driving Californians straight to Texas. That's not progress, Gavin, it's collapse." The room erupted. Even neutral reporters couldn't hide their surprise at Abbott's precision. Newsom forced a laugh, shaking his head. "Collapse? California still leads in GDP, in innovation, in influence. Without us, America would fall behind the world." Abbott's reply was immediate, his eyes locked on Newsom. "Without you? Governor, America is tired of paying the price for California's arrogance. You don't lift the country up, you drag it down. While you chase headlines, Texas delivers results. And tonight, America can see the difference." The hall exploded with chants, reporters scribbling furiously. Newsom shifted uncomfortably, his polished armor cracking under Abbott's relentless assault. This wasn't just a debate anymore, it was a dismantling. By this stage, the energy in the hall was electric. The moderator's attempts to calm the audience were pointless. The clash between Texas and California had become bigger than the stage itself. Every camera, every microphone, every eye was locked on Abbott and Newsom. Newsom, visibly tense but determined, leaned into the microphone. "Greg, let's not forget, Texas has its own failures. Power grid failures left millions freezing in the dark. Schools underperforming. Women stripped of their rights. You can talk tough, but when it comes to actually protecting your people, Texas falls short. California leads because we care about every citizen." The California side of the audience erupted, cheering, stomping their feet, trying to give their governor momentum. For a moment, it looked like Newsom had clawed back some ground. But Abbott remained steady. He didn't rush. He let the noise swell and fade before speaking with an icy calm that pierced the hall. "You care about every citizen?" he asked. "Tell that to the families paying $3,000 for a one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco. Tell that to parents forced to step over needles and crime just to walk their kids to school. You call that caring? That's negligence. That's failure dressed up as compassion." The audience gasped, then erupted into thunderous cheers. Newsom shook his head, attempting to laugh it off, but his expression betrayed frustration. Abbott pressed forward, his voice rising. "And about the Texas grid, yes, we faced hardship. But we fixed it, we strengthened it, and we took responsibility. When California faces blackouts, you shrug and blame the weather. Leadership isn't about excuses, Gavin, it's about results. And results are what Texas delivers." The crowd exploded into chants, reporters scribbling headlines like wildfire. Newsom's shoulders stiffened, his jaw tight. Abbott wasn't just countering anymore, he was dominating, leaving his rival scrambling to keep up. The hall had become a battlefield of words and willpower. The moderator gave up trying to control the noise. Abbott and Newsom were locked in a clash too powerful to contain. Newsom raised his voice, his polished demeanor now cracking. "Greg, your vision of America is outdated, rigid, heartless, backward. Texas may lure people with low taxes, but in the end, you'll be remembered as the governor who held back progress. California leads because we dream big, and dreams are what drive this country forward." His supporters erupted, desperate to revive the momentum. But Abbott, calm and deliberate, leaned toward the microphone. His tone was measured, but every word landed like a hammer. "Dreams don't keep the lights on, Gavin. Dreams don't pay the bills. Dreams don't stop crime in the streets. You talk about leading, but California's dream has become a nightmare for families who can't afford to live there, who fear for their safety, who watch their kids grow up surrounded by chaos." The crowd roared, drowning out the last of Newsom's applause. Abbott pressed harder, his voice now booming. "Texas doesn't just dream, we act. We build. We grow. And we give people the chance to live free, not trapped in failed experiments dressed up as progress. That's why America is looking to Texas, not California, for the future." The audience erupted, chants of "Abbott. Abbott," shaking the stage. Newsom tried to respond, but his words were lost in the thunder of the crowd. His once confident smile had vanished, replaced by the tight jaw of a man who knew he'd been outplayed. As the camera zoomed out, the contrast was clear, California's polished rhetoric against Texas's gritty conviction. And on this night, under the blinding lights of live TV, it was Abbott's steady resolve that dominated, leaving Newsom's vision in ruins.